Yo guys, what's up? Ayush Priyank here. In this video, I want to talk to you guys about some really important skills that you can use to improve yourself. So, when we enter this age of 20s, right, it happens lifelong, I guess, but especially in the 20s, there's a need to know the right stuff because you're being confronted with so many different things, right? A lot of you might not know what exactly you want to end up doing, right? What you want your career to be like, but there's still a pressure to learn new things to improve yourself. And the question is, well, what do I spend time to learn, right? What do I try to master? Because there's a limited number of things you can really take control over. And there are two types of skills that actually emerge when we talk in that sense. And there's a specific skill set, right, which is something that you're taught in institutions and colleges and universities and other areas, right? Like the technical skills. So if you want to how to dissect a frog, how to create a vaccine, how to design a graphic cover for a novel or something. I don't know, right? So there's just so many of different specific skills that you can learn. But then there are skills which are fundamental to almost everything, right? These are the general skills which are relevant in almost everything that you do. And just because they're general doesn't mean they're not good. In fact, the fact that general means that they are so important that any activity is fundamentally impossible without them. And if you can master these skills, then no matter which field you go, you will have an edge over all the other people. And what are these skills, right? What are the skills that you can use in almost every situation? So there's three of them, right? And I came across this actually through a story, right, that Jordan Peterson was telling. And Jordan Peterson is a clinical psychologist. He's pretty smart, and he was talking one day, and he was talking about dominance hierarchies. And dominance hierarchies are essentially the ways in which we become successful in any given field, right? So there's a dominance hierarchy for business, for artists, for life in general, right? And you have your own hierarchy as well. And these are basically the things that you do that make you better than others. And the essential things, the exact specific things differ in each field, right? To rise to the top of a hierarchy might mean for a businessman that might mean generating revenue, for a doctor that might mean saving lives, for an author that might mean getting readers. So the exact things differ, but there are a few things that are common that help you reach the top of the hierarchy, to be superior, to be better, right? Rather than just comparing with yourself with others, just to be the best that you possibly can. And he said that there are three essential skills over there, right? And he talked about a story, right? The story of stories, you can say, right? He talked about how stories are constructed. And the way stories work is that you have a hero who goes forth into danger, into chaos, into unknown territory. He sees things, right? He solves problem, he does stuff, right? And he brings back that information and he shares that with others. So doing something, right, going forward, challenging into the chaos, and then accomplishing something for the good of other people involved as well. Because if you're doing something that's just benefiting you alone, then other people aren't going to be that happy with you, right? They might not necessarily be angry, but they're not going to be very happy. And if you want to if you want to live in a social world, then the perceptions of others do matter, right? The extent to which they matter is decided by you, but typically it's smart to give consideration to the social opinions as well. So that's the essential story of stories, right? That's how stories go. Like you have a hero, he goes into the chaos, he goes into the unknown, and he sees something and he brings back what he learned for the good of others. And there's three things that really emerged from that story, right? There's three skills that really emerge. So the first thing is that you have to go forth into the unknown, you have to venture into the unknown. And you might think, okay, what sort of skill is that, right? Like that's not something people generally talk about, because you'll see others talk about how digital marketing is an important skill, or how coding is an important skill. You won't hear people say learn how to venture into chaos, but that's actually a major skill. Because when you look at the people who become successful, right, what they really do is they go forth into uncertain situations. And that's not easy. That's not just about courage. So first of all, that's about decision making, right? You have to judge the risks independent of what other people say. Even if others are saying it's not a good idea, you have to judge it for yourself. You have to have the ability to evaluate it in that manner, right? And then you have to actually execute. There's this guy, I think, he's a creator of Twitch, Michael Siebel, I think, right? And I was watching one of his videos, and he said something interesting. He was talking about startup founders mostly, but it can be applied in a more general sense. And what he said was, if you say you're going to do something and then you go ahead and do it, right, that alone can set you apart from a lot of people. That makes you really formidable, because everyone says things, everyone plans things, but to do that, that's difficult. So to venture into the unknown doesn't just involve planning that or thinking that or analyzing that. It involves actually executing on that as well, right? So the ability to actually get yourself to do stuff, right, to overcome the procrastination, to ensure proper stress management, to ensure proper productivity levels, the ability to go and venture and get things done. That's the first ability, right? It's a general ability, and it has sub abilities within it. And I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm going to be learning about them because I'm passionate about it, and I'm going to be sharing that with you as well. So that's the first thing, the ability to venture out and get things done. And you see, you can't imagine any profession or any field where you can achieve something substantial without that sort of an ability. If you're doing things that people have already done, there's not much new to be gathered from there, right? There's nothing remarkable that you can do if you're doing what others have already done. It's when you take a new approach, an uncertain approach, when you go down the untrodden path, that you actually yield something. You have the potential to yield something bigger and better than what the world has ever seen before. And then you have the second ability, which is, well, when you go into the unknown, well, what do you exactly do, right? You went there, you took the steps, you went out, you're in the darkness, right? And you're seeing all these things that other people haven't seen. Now you have to make sense of it, right? You have to actually see it. And it sounds easy, right, to just see something, but it's not actually that easy. There's this line which I really liked, and it was, you see what you look at. And it sounds simplistic, but it's actually fundamentally tied into it's a fundamental comment about the nature of human perception, because we are influenced by so many different biases, right? We don't take objective views. We are much more likely to be, if you look at a, let's say, if you look at a newspaper and you find an opinion that you agree with, you're less likely to doubt it. On the other hand, if you see some data or some facts that disagree with a prior belief, then you might not take the data seriously, or you might try to ignore it or avoid it or repress it, right? Have you ever had a conversation with someone where you're trying to convince them about something, and you can see that they're wrong, and you're like, why does that person not see that he is wrong? And it's absolutely amazing the lengths to which people will go to avoid being proven wrong, right? And because we have a fear of that, we have a fear of being wrong. And so what we need to do is that we need to overcome that, because only once we realize we are wrong can we begin to become more right. So what you need is a proper belief structure for accommodating that which you are seeing, because objective perception is not that easy a thing. People have all sorts of biases, and overcoming them entirely is difficult, but by becoming at least aware of them, we can work to minimize that. And the more we minimize these biases, the better we see what is actually there, and we can learn from that, right? And that's important, the ability to learn things. And we're not really taught that in most institutions. You don't hear people teaching you how to learn. They will teach you how to mug up things, perhaps. Right? Your teachers might tell you how to write answers to get marks, or how to remember these dates, or maybe a few tricks for that. But in an overall sense, how to learn from different things, how to perceive them, right, in a way that grants you strength. So a lot of the situations that you might face might not be voluntary, right? You might be in a situation, you might be in a bad situation, and you didn't choose to venture out there, but you're in that situation. It's a bad place. Well, what do, right? How do you overcome that? Let's say you applied for a few jobs and you didn't get into any of them. Well, what's your next step? How do you cope with that sort of a rejection? What do you plan next? Are you able to take it constructively, right? Let's say you had a fight with someone. Are you able to take that constructively? Are you able to analyze what went wrong? Are you able to try and improve that, right? How do you process the things that you are encountering in your life? And that's going to determine how you respond to them as well, and deal with situations overall. So that's the second step, right? Processing the things that you encounter when you're out into the chaos. And the third and final ability, which is really important, is the sharing aspect of it. So you've gone into the unknown, you've gone into the chaos, you've observed something, you've learned something important, and now you're trying to share it, right? Well, what do you need to do to share information? Well, first of all, you need the ability to communicate. That's essential. And a lot of people talk about communication, right, in a sort of superficial way. It's important to communicate, but it's really integral, right? Like, if you look at it, almost every single thing that you do is going to be determined by your ability to communicate. It doesn't matter whether you're right or wrong unless you can demonstrate that you're right, unless you can put forth your case properly. And so you need to have the ability to do that, whether it's about negotiating, whether it's about resolving conflicts. All of these things that involve human interaction must require a certain grasp over communication, and you need to know how to do that properly. And not only do you need to communicate, but you also need people to communicate with. So that means you need to learn how to network with others, because if you can't build a social circle, then you're not going to be able to communicate, right? And you're not going to be able to build a structure that supports you, because of course society has its limitations and social circles have their limitations, such as peer pressure and influence and all those sort of things. But they also lend a lot of support and can act as sources of information, of material support, of emotional support. And to channelize these properly, you need to know how to connect with others, how to network with others, and how to communicate yourself properly. If you're pissed off at something, if you don't like someone, how do you deal with that? And these are the sort of, perhaps you could call them social skills, right? Like the things that you need to master in order to interact effectively. So these are three major things, right? I think these are the three categories within which almost all the essential skills, right, the core elements of success are embedded. And if you can master these, then I think these are going to be useful in almost every single situation that you can possibly find yourself in, right? The careers can change, the specific skills that you're learning, right? Like you can be learning a language today, right? You might be learning Java today. 10 years down the line, nobody even uses Java. Who knows, right? Technology is changing at a rapid pace, and the industries and the professions, all these are fluctuating. But what changes very slowly in relation is human nature and how to interact with it, and the nature of world in general. And so if you can learn these two things, how to interact with people and how to deal with the world, how to deal with the chaos, and how to respond to it in a constructive manner, these are going to be the foundational blocks of your existence, essentially. These are skills that we should put effort into mastering. So how specifically you can do that, what specific tips and tricks might there be, and an in-depth explanation into all of these skills, I'm going to be covering that in the future videos, and I'll be sharing that with you guys. And yeah, see you then. Peace.